Art can mean different things to different people. For me, it's all about the joy of creativity. So if you draw, paint, write, dance, sing, craft, play air guitar, or even sculpt using nothing more than mashed potatoes, consider yourself an artist and join our conversation. For the next half hour, meet the artist and learn about their inspiration while we all enjoy the beauty of creativity. Welcome to Season 2 of Art Talk with John Cole Artist. Well, good evening, everyone. It's John Cole Artist. I want to thank everybody for joining me this evening, or if you're watching the replay, thank you for watching, or listening if you're listening to the podcast. Today is the 26th of March. I don't know how we got into March so fast, but we did, Penny, and I don't know what happened. Anyway, folks, I'd like to introduce you tonight to Penny Rempfer. She is an animal communicator. She's a human coach, and she's also an artist. Penny, how are you tonight?
Hi, John. It's great to see you today. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. Christine's on. As a matter of fact, I think you just talked to her a couple moments ago. She says, "Hello, beautiful souls." Thank you for, thanks, Christine, for showing up like you always do. I appreciate that. So, Penny, I was wondering if maybe you could tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm an animal communicator and a human coach. Been working with animals, well, all my life, but learned how to be a communicator when in 2019. And then I've been a coach. I used to work, I'm retired from Boeing, and I used to be a coach there along with some other type project management jobs. And since I've been retired, I've just found out that I love animals and then coaching. I'm coaching both of them. But what's happening too is I've always wanted to paint since I was little, and I started painting. So I just started painting watercolor because there was an available class in around 2018, and I started watercolor and I just loved it. And then here and there I was doing art, acrylics too. So I'm pretty much acrylic and watercolor painter right now. And just in the last, I'm going to say 6 to 8 months, I made a decision to post everything I do. I don't care if it's good or bad. Just put paint to paper. That was a real hard thing for me to do, is to put paint to paper. Oh my God, it has to be perfect or I'm going to screw it up. No,
feeling, yep.
You know the feeling. And so it's like, I just decided I'm going to post everything. And the more on my Facebook page is where I've posted. And it's like, wow, it's a great thing for me to see my history and how I've improved, but it's also fun. So I'm like giving myself permission to just paint anything. So that's kind of what I'm doing these days.
I think that's great. I love the idea that that you're putting your art out there, because even though I think folks like us might struggle with it, I think the fact is that there is no such thing as ugly art.
Yeah.
Right. Because that saying, art is in the eye of the beholder. And people have told me this over the years, if something doesn't meet my personal approval, it doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't meet someone else's approval.
Right.
I don't know. I took an art course a while ago, and when I was getting my bachelor's degree, it was one of those forced electives where we had to learn about like the Romantic period or the Impressionist period or Cubism or something like that. What's really interesting is that when you look at even that era of art, and you pick the era, you might sit back and go, what the heck am I looking at here? It doesn't make any sense. It's horrible, but it is meaningful because somebody did it, just like the art that I see in your background there. You did that art, and it's meaningful, whether or not it's to the world or just to you. That's the beauty of it, I think.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
For sure.
So watercolor and acrylic. And I know we talked this last weekend, and I think I brought up and asked if you had ever tried oil painting. And I think you said you haven't.
No, I never tried oil painting. I've had some I worked in a sick building back in the day and some moldy houses. And so I'm really sensitive to chemical smells. So I've been afraid to put the expense in to buy a few and try them out.
Just in case,
I'm a messy painter, so I get paint everywhere. And I was like, do I want to turpentine my skin to get the paint off? I get acrylic all over, and watercolor I love because it just washes away. But I am curious about the water-based oils that I've heard about.
Yeah, I've
And
seen them.
I am just starting to get into some multimedia too. I just took a class with one of my mentor instructors where we've mixed watercolor and acrylic and oil pastels. I do
Yeah.
have some of those, and just kind of messing around and just having fun and opening up, you know. I did, oh, I'm going to say about 5 or 6 years ago, I took a class of sketching.
Mm.
I'm not a sketcher. It's just not in me. I
Right.
don't I don't enjoy it as much, and I'm more critical of myself.
Mhm.
So what I like about watercolor is I can put a shape and value of color and let the paint do its thing.
Yeah.
And it kind of like does its own thing, and it either works or it doesn't.
Right, right.
So I kind of like losing control of that kind of stuff.
That's a nice characteristic to have. Me, I'm not like that. Now, Christine does point out that she's a messy painter too, and for what it's worth, I can confirm that.
Yep.
Confirm that.
I'm
So,
a messy painter,
yeah.
and I've been a messy painter, even painting walls in the house and stuff like that. Get more in my hair than I'd get on the walls. But no, it's just fun. And I have to admit, when I started, I was very critical of myself. And, I was expecting to paint as well as my instructor on the first day I learned how to paint, follow along and paint with her. And it's like, Penny, it took you probably a couple of months to learn how to walk as a kid. So I can't expect myself to know it so early, know everything. But as an adult, that critical mind comes in. So I've been working real hard on letting go of my criticality of myself. That's really where I think I've been blossoming in this last year, is
Yeah.
because I've been able to say, you know what, I don't care. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, it's good. Could you imagine if you had applied that mindset when you were like in your 20s?
Oh my gosh. I always say I wish I had my mind now in my 20-year-old body.
Oh, I
I'd
know.
be unstoppable.
Yeah, I tell you, some of the decisions I would have made different. I mean, not that I regret anything, but that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever, well, first, let me, two things I want to say. First is, when you talk about, you know, it takes you time as a child to learn how to walk. And I think painting's the same way, because I think there's a distinct difference from a technical perspective, right? On
Right.
watercolor versus acrylic versus oil versus sketching versus you name it, right?
Right.
Not necessarily the subject matter, but like with watercolor, dries super fast.
You have to go with watercolor, you go light to dark.
Right, right,
And usually the lightest on your piece is the paper. So the paper is the light, and sometimes you can put some gouache on it to make like the whiter whites. But for the most part, you either use masking liquid, and then you go to the lighter colors, and then you build and build and build. So you kind of put a lot more layers on. And
right.
then with the acrylic, you go dark to light and you put your highlights on last. So it's an opposite thing. It's kind of like, I tell my friends, I grew up playing softball. So it's kind of like playing softball and then, okay, now let's golf.
Mm.
It's a
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
different technique, so I kind of flip flop between acrylic and watercolor, but I just like watercolor better
Yeah.
because it blends and I don't know what I'm going to get. And sometimes there's some really cool magical things that there's no way I could have even imagined. And that's what's fun for me,
Yeah.
but I also am still a learner. I'm still learning how to get the right level of, you can paint wet watercolor on dry, or you can get your paper really, really wet on both sides or just one side. And then, depending on how much paint with how much water, you get certain responses.
Hmm.
So that's been the technical challenge of
Now, as
learning.
far and I know paper makes a difference too.
Yes. And every class I've taken with every instructor is buy the best paper you can afford.
Right.
So like the Arches 140, Saunders 200. I love the 200s because it's heavier, and I really
Yeah.
like with 300, but get the 100% cotton, because you can always take a painting, a watercolor painting, and you can basically stick it under the sink and erase it.
Mhm.
Unless you've got some staining paints. But for the most part, you can start over, and then you can always turn it over and paint on the other side. But you can you can always fix things.
Right.
I think you can with watercolor or with acrylic and oil too. But the better the paint, the better the paper, the better the outcome.
Yeah, because I know that Christine and I, we frequent Michael's quite often, Hobby Lobby periodically, and we've got a place called Art Supply Wholesaler that's in Beverly, Mass, which is right next to Salem.
Okay.
And you know, usually the only thing we can find is the 140-pound paper, which is your traditional watercolor paper.
Yeah.
But I've often found that to be a bit of a challenge. I've never used anything heavier than that because I just can't find it. Maybe special order.
Yeah.
But I have seen that, and I think you get better results because there's far less warping. And then, if you use a lighter, like if you were to use a piece of copy paper to watercolor on,
Oh, no.
what you're going to, even if it's a masterpiece, it's going to look like heck.
No,
And
you
there's no
can't.
real way to flatten it either.
No, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
Go to Blick.
Okay.
I love going to the store and touching things and buying things in a brick and mortar store. And the world's changing. And so Cheap Joe's art stuff and Blick are the two that I really like. There's Jerry's Artorama. And for the most part, those are the three that I go to, but that's where you can find sales on all the different papers and all that. And I basically buy
you're talking online, right?
Online.
Online, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cheap Joe's I really like. It's on the West Coast or East Coast, so you'll get things a lot quicker than I will. And Blick is good too. And I like watercolor out of the tubes. I like Daniel Smith, and I really like Holbein because it's got more of an opacity, it's more opaque, and it's really good for faces, portraits and things. And what I've learned is, oh gosh, there's just so many. I've got like 4 or 5 different brands of watercolors, and they all react differently. Some are, even though if you take the same color, the cobalt blue from each different brand, it's a different color, it's a different texture. So it's fun to kind of mix and match and play around with them. But I highly recommend getting the heavier paper, because what happens is I'm starting to get the whole paper soaking wet and putting it on a board. And then as it dries, it kind of it kind of sizes, and then you'll get some wells, but then as it completely dries, then it flattens out again.
It does.
So, or you can get the tape, my favorite tape. You can tape everything down, and that's fun too.
That's cool. Yeah. And we're going to take a look at some of your paintings here in a bit. Let me ask you about the 2 dog portraits I see in the background. Or 2 or
my
3?
babies.
3. Yeah. Those are acrylic.
Yeah.
And I think Christine asked you this right before the show, but I'm going to ask it because I think it's an interesting question. Have you combined your animal portrait talents with your animal communicator talents?
With my animal community, not specifically. I have painted several of my friends' dogs, and I think I've even done a couple kitties, but not as a part of the animal communication. That's a really good point, though, because I could do that. The key is finding. A lot of times when people send me a picture of their animal, it's just a picture of their animal, not like a really nice photograph.
Yeah.
And so I like to, like with Winston there, the guy in the yellow, my guy there, that's what he looked like in front of me, with his paw up asking for a treat. And I just love his hair. It's so opposite of mine and curly that I did that. But what I need to do is get a website.
Uh,
And I have a Dr. Penny Rempfer Animal Communicator Facebook page that you can you can reach me there, and you can see my testimonials and what I do with the animals.
right.
I do, not only do I communicate with them, but I also, if there's some behavioral issues, I can understand what's going on, and I use emotional freedom technique tapping to clear the emotions to help them move forward. So, but I can also put portraits. I'd love to do that because they're so fun to paint. Just
Yeah.
love painting them. And
Yeah. They're
this
beautiful too.
brown one is Lacey. And then I painted Winston again. And I love that picture of Winston too. He is such a character and he's so fun to paint. And
Mhm.
Lacey is just so pretty and she's harder for me to paint.
Right. Right.
But anyway,
Well, just remember that, if you add that to your business line, since I brought it up, I get 10% of all profit.
okay.
Boom. There you go.
You got that, John.
All
I'll make
right.
sure I'll take a note right now.
Awesome. So, hey, let's take a look at some of your paintings. Would you mind if I brought a couple up here?
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
So I picked some out, and I know that I think they're kind of scattered, different types of media.
Yeah.
But maybe we could kind of go through them one by one, and we could talk a little bit about them.
Sure. This is acrylic,
Mm-hmm.
and this was fun. I really like I told you, I like watercolor, but what I really like about this is I was able to get some really good movement in the water. So I love the greens and the blues together as a watercolor. And it's just really fun to paint this one, with the shadows. This
Yeah.
I did a couple of years ago. So this is where I was learning to use blue as a shadow, for goodness sake. It's like it's all about shapes and values. And one of my instructors has, kept reminding me of that. And it's just fun. So this
Yeah.
one makes me smile all the time.
Yeah. What I like, I think what really brought, because you sent a whole bunch of them, which was awesome, and I'm not. We'd probably spend 30 minutes talking about everything you sent, because you sent me some really nice pictures. This one I specifically picked out or curated because I love what you did with the shadowing and the highlights. I just think that, and probably because I struggle with that. You
Okay.
mentioned blue as a shadow color, which makes sense because you're in water, right? And with the sun and the refraction. Um, I'll admit I tend to go towards gray,
Oh, okay.
and then when I do my paintings, they look a little dirty. And I think that your use of blue here really makes this sparkle. So that's something I'm going to take with me moving forward. So the next time, I dip my toes, so to speak, into the koi pond pool, which I've done on
Yeah.
many occasions, I'm going to exercise my blue.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
gray is what? Gray is red, yellow, and blue all together. And so it's great. But see, this is I basically, what I also do is use the same color blue. So even like the blue where the little koi is, and you see the darker blues there,
Hmm.
that's the color blue I would use in the shading
Right.
with a little bit of white instead of green.
Yeah.
And so I'm using the same. I also learned how to use the same colors. So, keeping the color palette smaller with a cool red, yellow, blue and a warm red, yellow, blue. And
Hmm.
that's about it.
Yeah.
And it keeps it so it doesn't get muddy. So
Yeah.
that
It
was
looks
a
great.
great learning.
Yeah. So thanks for that technique. I appreciate it.
Sure.
See, I like to learn on my own show. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Christine
Glad.
wrote stunning, by the way, so she
Oh,
appreciates that.
thank you so much.
Let's see if I can bring up the next one.
This was fun to paint. This was really fun. And this
So,
I love watercolor, and here you're showing all my acrylics. I love it. But what I like about this is the brightness of it, and what I also did again, if you see the pinks in the bottom for the like the sunrise,
mhm.
I really want to do some more sunrise and sunset paintings. I just haven't sat down to do it, but I still like the look of trying to get a watercolor look with acrylics, I guess, if that
Right, right.
makes sense.
Out of curiosity, have you ever tried mixing? And I don't mean literally mixing together, but because you spoke a little bit about mixed media before we got online, but have
Yeah.
you tried working with watercolor and acrylic in the same painting?
Yes.
You have.
Yes. So if you it's, I sent you one where it's like reddish and orange and white flowers,
Mhm.
kind of really abstract. So what I like to do, because acrylic you paint on canvas, and you can paint on watercolor paper, but watercolor paper will not stay on this canvas. So
Right,
I
right.
can't put watercolor over the top of acrylic, but I
Yep.
can put acrylic over the top of watercolor. So I paint watercolor first, and then I
Mhm.
get all these really cool um blooms and different things that the water does. And then I'll paint whatever I want to paint with watercolor, and then I'll put the acrylic on over the top.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I had learned, not that long ago watching YouTube, because I love watching YouTube. I tell you, I thank God for YouTube, that's all I can say.
Yeah.
But I had never thought about combining oil with acrylic. That had never crossed my mind
Ooh, that one
until,
might work.
yeah, I mean, if you did your painting in acrylic and then because oil paints, because some acrylic paints, unless it's super heavy body paint, it becomes very translucent, and if that's not what you want, it's a problem. But oil can be a lot more opaque. So doing a painting kind of the same way you were talking about, where you would start with watercolor and add acrylic, what I could do is do an acrylic painting
And
and
then
then
add
finish it
oil.
off with oil. Because also
Because
oil takes forever to dry, which
because
means
like
you have a lot more freedom.
I heard it takes like a week.
It can.
But
It
then
can take a
you
very
can move
long
it.
time.
The thing about acrylic though is you have to move fast,
Yes.
or
Yes.
and again, like you said, the heavy body, I really like the heavier bodied. I don't like the student grade. I
Right.
mean, student grade is good for playing around and fun, but if I want something that I want to paint
Yeah.
that I want to keep or frame or give away, I would use a heavy body.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes
So,
sense.
yeah.
All right.
Oh, my favorite. I love this one.
I'm going to guess this is a watercolor.
This is all watercolor. This is a half sheet. So it's, oh gosh, 2 feet by 3 feet.
Oh, it's that big.
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe a foot and a half. Yeah. It's a half sheet. Oh, I don't know. Maybe 22 inches by, yeah. I don't know a watercolor paper is like 48 by 22. So it's more than 11. It's a big sheet of paper. And I just cut it in half, and that's the size of that. That's the biggest painting I've ever painted.
Yeah. Painting big intimidates me. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I tend to
Bigger, all you need is bigger brushes. That's
big,
it.
bigger brushes, and I think the ability to think bigger. Okay, Christine, who by the way says loves the texture in the rocks.
Yeah, that was fun to do.
Yeah, Christine's really she throws all caution to the wind.
Yeah.
She'll grab the biggest canvas that she can buy at Michael's,
Yep.
especially when they're 70% off, which is awesome.
That's the best time.
Yeah, and she'll just go to town. Me, I look at something that big, I'm like, oh my heavens, it's like I tend to want to work small. It's just it's interesting how we're so different when it
So
comes
I
to
have to
painting.
ask, are you a detail-oriented person? Do you
I
like,
am.
there you go.
Yeah.
So I have a belief, and I've just created this belief over the last couple of years. I like things quick, fast, I can go to alpha brainwave state real fast and communicate with a dog as if I'm talking to you. That's how fast I can talk. I like things fast.
Right.
So and big and bold. So that's how I paint. And my friends who are very detailed and more introverted and quiet, they paint these or draw these gorgeous, detailed, sketches and paintings. And it's like, I love them. And there's no way I could do that.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Yeah.
Because it's not my personality. It's not my strength. And I say, I want to I want to, enjoy your paintings, and I'll do something more big and
Yeah.
abstract.
Yeah, the variety makes it interesting. If we were all painting the same way or the same subject or the same style, art would be like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Right?
And what was really nice is I don't have to sketch these things.
Right.
And this was really fun to paint. I'm more critical on the leaves, on the stems, but I totally love the irises themselves. The way, and that was done on I got that whole paper soaking wet on both sides. and then just started throwing paint on it. And that's what I talk about when I say letting the paint do its thing.
Mhm.
There's no way I could have painted that.
Yeah, and
The paint painted that.
yeah, I mean, it's so organic, and this is one that I could easily see on, like, a note card or something like that. It's
Yeah,
beautiful. It
yeah.
really is beautiful.
Thank you. What I see now is, oh, thank you, Christy. What I see now is in nature, you don't necessarily see like a picket fence of leaves, of stems, all with the same distance between. So, hindsight, I would take out a couple of the leaves or the stems. Like I would have taken out maybe 2 stems there.
Mhm.
But that's me being critical, right? So
Well,
let
right,
it
'cause
go, Penny.
I wouldn't change any of it. That's great.
But
I don't think I could do that.
okay. I think you
I
could. I think you could.
Well, I'll try it sometime, and then I'll
Let
show
me know.
you and you only.
Yeah. And you know what also is helpful is I'm a social person, so I love to paint in classes.
Mm,
And I don't necessarily paint the same thing that we've got classes where you're just kind of like in the same room and you kind of paint the same thing, but you paint your own thing.
right, right.
So it's like I can be on Zoom with someone and I can be painting and just get the energy of the connection and still paint because it's more fun for me to paint in a social setting than it is by myself. So that's
Yeah,
just me.
I tend to wanna be in my little office space with the door closed and paint. I'm just the opposite.
And that's cool. That's cool too.
Oops, there's that again. All right. I got multiple computer screens getting me all messed up. There we go. This is the
Ah,
last picture I pulled out. It's
that yellow Winston is this one. And then
yeah,
that
yeah.
was my first attempt at painting Lacey, my 2-year-old little pup. So yeah, I
Yeah, I
love
think
those.
really good paintings. I mean, honestly, excellent paintings.
Thank you.
So you
Thank you.
definitely got the talent for it. So
Thank you.
what's next for you then? So
Oh my goodness.
you've got these multiple talents. You're putting yourself out there. You're retired. You're doing oil and watercolor and animal communications. I mean, where do you see yourself headed?
Well, I totally love the animal communication and I'm so drawn to animals. So, I might just be adding with a little bit of, finder fees to you, John,
That's true.
about
Don't forget.
maybe adding some, painting acrylics, maybe not such this big size, but a smaller size of animal paintings with my animal communication. I also am really, really drawn to sunrises and sunsets. And I painted this one ocean scene in like 5 minutes. And
Mhm.
I was coached by an artist to paint 100 of them of the same thing. And out of 100, I'll be changing, colors and stuff, but the same scene basically
Right, right.
100 times. And then she said, out of that, you're going to see, I'll develop my style more, I guess.
Interesting.
And I'm noticing that even as I'm painting more this year, my style is really developing in a different way, which I'm really enjoying. And I'm having more fun. So
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
think my future is more paint, more fun. I'll probably do a little bit more mixed media because I really enjoyed mixing the two. And I've had this vision for like 20 years and I've never done it, but it's taking a watercolor really and then a really like a background landscape, abstract landscape, and then putting words on it that are important to the person. It would be more of a consignment thing,
Right.
or some calligraphy over the top of the scenes. And I don't know, that's been in my mind, so I don't know where that's going to go, but I might just do some of those and see what happens. you know
I, you know what? You might as well because you're having fun doing it. And I think it's always a good thing to try different things because you're right. You never know what something's going to be. You never know what it's going to mean to other people, right? Unless you actually give it a go. And I think that's
Right, and put it out there because I
put it
just
out there.
started putting it out there in the last, I'm gonna say, putting my photos out there in the last 8 months, 6 to 8 months, every time. And I've started taking, painting more, and practice does help.
Yeah.
I'm getting better because I am painting more. Imagine that. My instructor said, because I would only paint once a year in a class, and then I'm not improving. But if I'm painting every 2 weeks or once a month, I'm improving.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to be painting even more than that.
I applaud you for that, and keep posting what you're doing, because I can't wait to see what else you have in store for us.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you so much.
And that is 30 minutes, half hour. It went by super fast. It always does.
Thank
I want
you.
to thank you for being on the show, and hopefully you'll come back, because I'd love to have you on again. I know there's hundreds of other things we could be talking about as well.
Sounds great. Look forward to it.
So
thank you.
Before I go, folks, I just want to remind you, for those that are interested, on May 16th of this year at the Studio Movie Grill in Marietta, Georgia, I will be giving my first ever TEDx talk. Wow.
Woo!
And I'm going to tell you exactly what it's going to be about, because it's the first time I've read my title out loud. It's called Superstitions: How Travel Changed My Story. So if you're interested, go to this link, which is right here, which is TEDxLakeCharles.com. You can get a ticket, come watch me speak, and I think it's going to be amazing. And Krista, and so Penny, have a wonderful evening. If you could hang on for a few seconds. In the meantime, folks, this will be pushed out on Spotify and all the major podcasts tomorrow morning. Until next time, keep doing art. Thank you so very much for joining me on the Art Talk podcast, where it's my goal to bring artists together to talk about their craft. If you'd like to join me for a conversation, please reach out via email at johncoleartist@gmail.com or by visiting my website at johnrobertcole.com. So until next time, keep crafting, painting, and inspiring others with your creativity. You make more of an impact than you know. See ya.